Hi. Welcome to Someone Else's Movie, the podcast where an actor, writer, director, or nebulous industry figure gives a little love to a movie they didn't make. I'm Norm Wilner, senior film writer for Now Magazine, and this is the other thing I do. My guest this week is kind of a ringer. New York chef Andrew Carmellini of Locanda Verde, Lafayette, Bar Primi, Little Park, and my single favorite place to eat in North America, the Dutch. He's also an old friend with a single movie credit. About 20 years ago, he conceived the dishes for a film called Simply Irresistible. It totally counts, and I roped him into doing a show. Andrew picked The Blues Brothers, the 1980 John Landis comedy that brought John Belushi and Dan Aykroyd's novelty Saturday Night Live band to the big screen in the most insane way imaginable, as an all-star demolition derby that places Jake and Elwood Blues at the center of a breakneck chase to get their beloved band back together and save their childhood orphanage. It's a secret musical, too, featuring what might be the strongest lineup of soul performers ever assembled for a motion picture. And given the general level of chaos and busyness in the movie, I think recording this episode in a test kitchen above Lafayette made a lot of sense. Also, we taped this back in January, less than a week after David Bowie died. That stuff's staying in. This is Someone Else's Movie.
For my birthday 2 years ago, Gwen, my wife's friend, got me a signed copy of the script of Blues Brothers.
Oh, cool.
It was like a promotional kind of like, thing they were putting out before the movie.
Signed by Aykroyd, Landis?
I think it's Belushi and Aykroyd.
Oh, wow.
And it's like a, typed out script inside like a Blues Brothers like folder thing with like a little, I have no idea.
Oh, like a program thing?
It's like a little program thing.
8.5 by 11s with the press kit?
It's like a press kit type of thing, yeah. And signed.
That's amazing. I'm going to guess you saw this at a fairly young age and saw it a bunch of times, but what was your first exposure?
Blues Brothers, it was, it was like 1980, right?
80, yeah. Summer 1980.
So I was 9 years old. And, because I started thinking about this the other day since we were talking about it, and it was such a big deal for us. It's so ingrained in our psyche, of me and my clique of degenerates, that we basically recess in my parochial school, St. Columkill,
in Cleveland,
in South Cleveland, is that what you did if you were cool, and even if you weren't cool, is that there was a huge game of something called blood ball, and recess was on a black asphalt parking lot. Blood ball basically was a combination between soccer, rugby, and no hold barred, kind of like do whatever football.
Okay. And
one side of the parking lot, if you got the ball over the grass, that was a point, and you had the ball on the other side. But it was tackle. It was rough. But everybody played it. Like all guys played it. And if you were on the cool team, the name of the cool team was the Blues Brothers.
Okay.
And the name of the other team, they didn't even have another. There was like not even a name for the other team because they were just always the challengers.
All right, so it's like the Globetrotters and the Washington Generals. Nobody remembers the Generals.
Exactly.
They're just there for the show.
They were just there for the show, and that was made up. Whoever wanted to challenge the Blues Brothers would show up for the game.
Okay.
So naturally, like the Blues Brothers was made up of like, the cool kids, the dudes the girls wanted to like they had crushes on, and like the jock fellows, and the other team was the misfits and the stoners and the rockers and the and I sometimes would be on both teams, or
I was
like
gonna say, I would kind of go between both.
I would kind of go like between both of them. It depends what kind of like mood, but always like it was that's how what a important thing that was to us in South Cleveland.
So at that point, Belushi and Aykroyd had been playing the characters for a while. Had the movie had already come out, and this was
probably
part of that world?
Probably we didn't, since we were in fourth grade.
Mm-hmm. And it was R-rated.
It was. We saw the movie, but I don't remember the character on Saturday Night Live when it came out because I didn't watch Saturday Night Live when I was in third and fourth grade.
Right. I'm thinking more in terms of the albums. I mean, they released a couple of records by that point. So
yeah, they released a couple of records, but our first exposure was the movie.
Was the movie? Yeah.
Yeah, hands down was the movie.
And so, like, how did it play? I don't think I saw it. I was 12 when it came out, so I don't think I saw it right away. I know it took me a year or so to catch up to it. So how did it play for a 9-year-old? Like, what was your experience of seeing it?
I mean, my uncle took me to see the Blues Brothers because of the music, you know, and he, you know, my dad was country, bluegrass, and blues. My uncle was, you know, it was in a more expanded musical universe in like his house a little bit. So there was more R&B, more kind of proggy Frank Zappa type stuff, and a lot of guys that were in that band were Frank Zappa musicians.
Yeah, that is kind of bizarre. Like that Zappa's people end up producing. The thing that always strikes me about the Blues Brothers is that it is a novelty band that is still one of like the great soul sidemen lineups. It's the movie is this excuse to get all these incredible legends into a film, and it's some of the like. I was talking about this with somebody about Aretha Franklin and how her stuff just isn't available. That there's that 1974 concert film that's been suppressed yet again. We didn't get it at TIFF. It was announced and then pulled after the first press screening, and I missed the press screening. And the only footage of Franklin in her prime really is the stuff in this movie,
right?
Because everything else is badly shot video or something, and it isn't cinematic enough. And you see this movie, and even if you go for Aykroyd and Belushi, you come out like loving Ray Charles and James Brown and Franklin. And
it's interesting because it's such a, you know, Steve Cropper, Donald Duck Dunn, like those guys are Stax Records. And you know, it's interesting. Stax, it was like one of the first integrated, before even Muscle Shoals, Stax was the first integrated record label,
right?
Where you had the house band was made up, you know, of these white players and these African American, you know, soul R&B guys.
Yeah.
And that were the sound of that era, and it's awesome to see them like in that role.
Yeah, in a giant choreographed musical that also has a million car crashes, and like it really is a 4-quadrant picture. There's something for everybody. The only thing it kind of cuts short on is the romance, but that just gives you that amazing scene with Belushi and Carrie Fisher.
Right.
So it's still pretty good. I introduced a screening in November. For now, we have this free movie Monday thing we do once a month at the Royal Cinema, and we picked the Blues Brothers, and it was just, the energy was so great, and there were people who'd seen it a dozen times, and there were people who'd never seen it at all, and like I envy them their first experience of seeing that movie, especially now, like 35 years later, when the songs are standards all over again. I mean, everybody knew the songs that people were singing, but that Minnie the Moocher number, now it just feels like a time machine has opened.
Sure.
And that's what Landis wanted when he cuts from shabby Cab Calloway to slick tuxedo Cab Calloway, is to show you what this would have been like. But in the context of a movie with a million cars exploding and Nazis and Dan Aykroyd doing that thing he does where he just barfs out incredible layered text as dialogue, just the way he lists off what they've done to the Bluesmobile, why he bought the cop car, cop shots, cop brakes, cop. It's
interesting, you know, like how it's like, that's 1980, and 1980 was a bad year generally. I mean, I knew that when I was 9. Yeah. The economy was bad. My dad didn't work much. Our car, which my dad put 275,000 miles on, was a 1970. We drove it off the lot in 1975.
Okay.
It's a 1975 brown Impala.
Okay.
Which is close to the car that the Blues Brothers car is. So they're
Bluesmobile.
You know, so the Bluesmobile is, you know, and aesthetically after 275,000 miles, it was a very similar kind of like look to it.
Yeah.
I think we called it the Brownsmobile too. Actually, at one point.
So this is a film that resonated with the whole family.
Maybe not my mom, but you know, but definitely the boys.
Right.
Yeah.
And so, as a kid, experiencing those characters for the first time, like, did it kind of shape your idea of Belushi? And did you know who they were at the time? Because they were doing R-rated stuff like Animal House, and I guess they were both in 1941, but nobody remembers them.
Yeah, probably not. we kind of just knew them as the Blues Brothers, you know, and just after that, discovery afterwards, like, you know, who they were, and like the SNL stuff. I didn't watch SNL, and I don't remember in the 70s or the early 80s being like allowed to watch SNL. It was probably like later when I was like watching old episodes and like, you know, catching up on that. But I would stay up late, but I was always interested in like, we had a third bathroom, and if you left, I had this technique where I would open the door before I went to sleep. I would open the door to the third bathroom because it overlooked the living room, and you could see the TV through the mirror. And so I would go to sleep, but the door would be open, and then I would go to sleep, and my parents would still be watching TV, and I could sneak to my parents' bedroom it was called my mom's bathroom because it was like a little bit nicer and like white design and everything, and watch through the mirror. But I was mostly like interested in seeing the end of the Bond films because there was always like the girl part, so that was like very intriguing to me. But I don't remember watching SNL through the mirror.
Everybody has a story about finding ways to watch television after hours. Like the kids today, they don't watch to a schedule. They won't ever know what it felt like to sort of
they're not
figure it out. You have to MacGyver your way to television.
There's that mysterious time after 8 o'clock.
Mm-hmm. When things are supposed to be a little grown up, but they really weren't. I guess the Bond movies were.
I mean, the Bond movies were, and Saturday Night Live, and
it's such a hazy part of my own childhood because in 1980, like I would have been 11, so I was reading a lot. I was a heavy movie geek by then already, but I didn't get to see the Blues Brothers. I missed that one. I had to catch up to it later. I don't think I saw it in the theater until the 90s. But and video just does no justice. Like at the time, the pan and scan VHS version that I watched like half a dozen times in the space of 3 days because that's how you had to have. That's how long you could have it. And I figure that's how most people our age found it. Like if they didn't catch it in the theater. So once you see it and incorporate it into the murder ball, death ball game, what else happens? When did you next encounter it?
You know, I'm not sure. We started talking about what movie to see, and probably the movie I have seen the most is The Blues Brothers.
Okay.
Just because the music's great, and it was a big part of our childhood. And I mean, we had, you know, I think my first band in high school, like early high school, probably like even like 8th grade, 9th grade, we covered a lot of those songs.
Okay. So
it was very important for me to have a horn section.
That's great.
Because in my dream band, when I was, you know, in my early teens, before, you know, you could really plug it in and thrash it out, it was really important that I had a horn section. My own Tom Bones Blown.
Right. Tower of Power.
You know, that's what I wanted. But I went to the first taping of the Colbert show, and they had a special guest with the band at Tom Bones Malone there.
Oh wow!
And you know, I felt maybe I was the only person that got excited about that. I was like, Tom Bones!
Does he still have it? Can he still play?
Oh, Tom, yeah, he still plays on it.
No, I mean, does he what was it like to watch him perform? Was it just part of the band?
Well, the Blues Brothers, like one part of that. I remember like his Zappa performances were the thing that I remember.
Oh, okay.
Remember the most. So the only time I saw Zappa, which was his last tour, the Them or Us tour. So this is 1987. He was in the horn section then, and they played a 4-hour set, no lie.
Jesus.
And they played as a joke, they played Stairway to Heaven for like the 4th encore. It's kind of like a super geek inside joke if you're a musician. Normally, you know, where the guitar solo would come in, they decided to do that on horns, which was like super cool. And Tom Bones Malone. Important stuff if you grew up in that time. Yeah,
it is, and it's that thing where like I knew I was more Motown than Stax just because of what was available to me.
Sure.
But Stax is just as electric, and in some ways I think I'm more fond of it now, just because it was rarer, and it turns up in through Kate's family. I've discovered a lot of Northern Soul, which is this sort of weird. Like it has Northern Soul is the English tradition of soul music, but it's from everywhere. It's just like glommed into a huge Katamari Damacy ball that just picked up everything. So like Frankie Valli's The Night is a huge one for them, which barely anybody knows here because it's such a weird song. It's the one with, you know it? It's the one with the weird kind of falsetto bass line thing where it almost fights itself electronically. There's this electric guitar thing that yells at the voice, and it's such a strange song. But there's a lot of stacks in there, and a lot of that, to me, the first time I really heard it was the Blues Brothers, was the cover versions. And I will still argue that their version of Expressway to Your Heart is just like the best one, because it's got so much more love in the production. Like the thing that comes back to me watching the movie is John Belushi, who is unquestionably like fucked up half time. He is not always conscious in those long shots. They just propped him up and shot a scene for some stuff. He is just spinning out in some moments of that shoot. But the choreography, the specifics, the performance, he nails it. He is so alive and electric. And Aykroyd, in that weird straight man thing he does where he completely, it's what made him perfect for the Dragnet movie, right? He just dials himself right down to nothing except for the physicality. And their movements, even when they're just walking, when Elwood's being walked out through the prison in that beginning, that incredible silent prologue.
The light coming through the prison, kind of like the prison gate, and the shot of him standing in front of the car.
Yeah.
Dun.
Exactly. I forget every time just how powerful that is and how long the build-up is. Because when we showed it in November, I introduced it, and I'm like, I was telling people how much energy it had and how it grabs you right away, and then it starts and it's like, shit, I forgot nothing happens for 2 minutes. And they're all just.
But if you grew up Catholic and you grew up in the Midwest and you have a brother and you were like musicians. Like all four of those things that we were, like it's even more compounded, because there's all those, and you're like very middle class, you don't have a lot of money, Rust Belt stuff, it's like even for me it was
so the penguin rings true, the morality stuff in there, all of that.
The penguin, and it's funny because I watched that recently with Gwen, my wife, and she's like, Did you ever get hit by a nun? I was like, well...
Define hit?
I've never gotten hit by a nun, but I have gotten paddled by a deacon. And she's like, what does that mean? I was like, it's like paddling was a thing in my...
With the paddle, with the proper
with the paddle,
like the big wooden paddle.
It was a thing, and it was the principal. He was the principal of the school, and he was the only one that delivered corporal punishment.
Jesus. And this was late 70s, early 80s, where that just happened all the time.
1976 to 1983 or 4.
Okay. I suddenly feel a lot better about having gone to a Jewish day school as a kid, because we got guilted on all the time, but there was never any physical threat.
I survived.
Oh.
There was one point where I had the record paddles for the school, which was like 48. I'll never forget it.
In a single...
my career at my 8 years, first year through first grade through 8th grade.
So that's 8 a year.
Yeah.
No, 6 a year. Wait, I can't.
I think 4th grade was a strong year for paddles.
And that's long since phased out, I assume. But
I would assume so.
Let's hope so, anyway. But so the knuckle wrapping in the movie is not something you personally encountered.
No, it was the paddle.
Right. Yeah. It's. The casual violence in the movie, I'm going to go back to the movie now because it's too disturbing to actually go into the whole parochial school world, since I just watched Spotlight again last week too. Good movie. Really, really, really good movie.
I did not experience that.
I'm glad to hear that. I don't want to open that door if I don't have to. We're joking about molestation. I can cut this part. The world of the Blues Brothers, the Blues Brothers themselves exist in a sort of a heightened reality, obviously, where everything, like musical sequences break out and people are just prepared to throw rocket launchers at each other for fun, and the Illinois Nazis are lurking at the back. But the way the film opens with like almost a hyper-realistic treatment, it's Michael Bay filmmaking now. Like it's slick commercial filmmaking right up until they throw it out, but it's really, really artful. And watching it again with an audience is just like, forgot just how much is in this movie. There are huge chunks of it that feel new to me every time because I've focused on the musical numbers or like just the whole build up to the James Brown number. That's delightful. Like there's so much.
Oh, yeah, the opening sequence of the movie to James Brown is like some amazing storytelling.
So, and you knew who these guys were, so you're sort of just leaning in and experiencing it that way.
Trivia fact.
Yeah.
Shaka Khan is in the.
That's
is
right.
In the,
she's in the dance sequence.
In the dance sequence.
There is so much talent. And
those movies, you know, I guess there was you know, you would know this more than me, but it seems like that style movie they always get made, you know, in not economically great times where there's a massive cast, you know, and it's like it's a wide
Mad
World type like movies with the mega cast and you know all the different cameos. I guess that happens. It happened a lot maybe 4 or 5 years ago. It's happening less now.
Yeah. With those movies, those are sort of interwoven narratives, and the same, like it keeps checking in on different characters. Blues Brothers is more like a cameo movie where you just get these special guest moments where they just burst up and disappear again. In the 70s, actually weirdly, the Blues Brothers is a perfect analog to this because in the 70s they did that with disaster movies.
Yeah, sure.
You know, like all those movies with and Henry Fonda as the president, and you had the box of people's faces on the poster. Poseidon Adventure Time for the Swarm.
The Swarm. That was a good one. Yeah.
Meteor.
What was the Spider movie? There was the Spider movie.
There's a giant spider invasion. Kingdom of the Spiders, the one with Shatner.
Spiders, yeah.
Yeah, that has a great final shot. That one screwed me up as a child, where they come out. The last handful of survivors emerges, and the whole town is webs, and it just pulls out.
Yeah.
And the movie ends.
King of the Spiders. That's
Kingdom,
right.
Yeah. And you just sit there and go, oh, movies can actually be nihilistic and horrifying. But when the Blues Brothers came along, I guess the last one before that would have been Spielberg's 1941, where with Belushi and Aykroyd, a million different things are going on.
Spielberg, also a cameo.
That's right. And Frank Oz and Landis. I think it was the first time Landis really started doing that, putting directors in everything. Because he does it in Three Amigos and he does it in Spies Like Us, famously. Terry Gilliam shows up in a Russian hat at one point.
Oh, really?
Yeah. And Trading Places has at least 2, I think, walk-ons from filmmakers. But in the Blues Brothers, I think Frank Oz is like the first voice. He's the first person who speaks. You know, one condom soiled. That's Miss Piggy, the guy behind the desk. And
I was gonna say, I was trying. I guess it is the first person.
One pair of sunglasses, one hat, black. Just this incredible disdain that he's going through. But the Blues Brothers is the analog to the disaster movie because it is a disaster movie. I mean, it's this epic car wreck chase thing,
which is also, you know, that's another, like, you know, those. There's epic car chases and car wrecks, which is, you know, this 70s. If you're a boy growing up in the 70s,
sure,
your ultimate movie.
Yeah, I mean, it came right out of the Smokey and the Bandit movies, and what was the Dukes of Hazzard was on the air. Hooper. That's right. Sorry, yeah. Hopper was the sitcom, right? There was a sitcom Hopper. You may be right. Yeah.
Like a cleaning guy or something like that. I remember. But Hooper, yeah.
Hooper. God, that was the golden age of practical effects too. Like, I mean, not until like Fury Road, right, brings it back around again to proper cars being destroyed for real. And the Furious movies, I suppose, also do it. But it's something, yeah, when you're a teenage kid, that never goes away. The idea that you can just watch stuff go real fast. I remember watching Vanishing Point. I must have been in my 20s when I first saw it and thought, oh, this was embraced as this epic, yeah, okay, the car is really beautiful, but nothing is happening. And then you see Hooper or Blues Brothers where there's just kinetic energy and it's just so much fun.
The car movies, yeah. Remember The Car?
The movie, the horror. Oh, The Car,
The horror movie, The Car.
Newly reissued on Blu-ray, just so we can catch up.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
With
Brolin, I think. James Brolin?
James Brolin, yeah. He plays the sheriff.
I have it at home, and I keep looking at it and thinking, this can't be as bad as I remember.
It was scary as hell. I remember very scary.
So it worked on you. So, okay, did you see it in theater, television?
I probably definitely saw it on television.
Okay. I'm just wondering, I've seen it twice, I guess. Once on TV, just sort of paying attention to it a little bit. And the second time all the way through when it first came out on DVD and thinking, this is very silly. But I'm old now. So it doesn't work on me. I'm invulnerable.
Convoy, that's another movie of the era that's in the same kind of, car chasing, cars.
Yeah.
Girls, sense of adventure.
There must have
been to the man, running from the law, all that stuff.
I guess it's like it evolved out of Billy Jack, maybe. That kind of rebel spirit. That's what like the new Hollywood renaissance of the late 60s and early 70s that brought us Nicholson and Easy Rider, I guess. Sure. It sort of coalesced into car chase movies and films about attitude, films about rebels going real fast in the desert because A, it's cheap to shoot that.
Right.
And B, people really responded to it. I guess...
Hey, I'll watch Faster Pussycat again, no problem.
That's a fascinating film, too. But it is a really weird spirit that's like the last gasp of the American hippie ethic at the same time, right? I mean, it's environmentally destructive and kind of dickish, but it is the freedom thing, like the idea that this is the last place you can go in your car by yourself on the road. Sure. And even the Blues Brothers are what they're doing for a really good cause. They're just breaking every law in the book to do it. And it isn't until the Nazis show up that they have someone like the film sort of clarifies its moral perspective. It's like, yeah, these guys are jerks, but they're not dicks. And then, of course, you have Henry Gibson, is the leader of the Illinois Nazis, who is just this marvelous comic actor who is working with Robert Altman all the time and somehow turns up in this movie as apparently he was the sweetest man in the world, and here he is playing a monster.
What was his name? I get his name?
Henry Gibson.
Gibson.
Little pale white guy. No, Gibson was like a this sort of sly comic actor. He's in Nashville. He's in.
Oh, that's right. He was in Nashville. That's right.
Yeah, so many of Altman's films, and he looks like I don't know if I just said this or thought it, but he looks like the older version of Teller from Penn and Teller. There's a sort of softness to his face and a smile, a kindness in his eyes, which makes him perfect for the Illinois Nazi leader, because he's doing his absolute best to deliver all his dialogue reasonably. Like he seems to think obviously he thinks he's right about whatever he's saying, but he's really quite calm and measured, and then things just get worse and worse and worse for him because the audience wants to see him punished, because we want to see him lose his cool, and it never quite happens. I've always loved that little performance, and just the fact that he really does keep an even keel throughout the entire film as things get worse and worse and worse. Right. Even when he's mad,
even when he's in the car is falling from the thing, he just has a calmness to his face.
Yeah, it's like Wile E. Coyote falling off the falling into thin air. So you find this movie, you see this movie, and then later, what the thing that I love about movies like this is that you start discovering the people involved, because the casts are so big and there's so much going on. It's like the Harry Potter movies are gateway to British screen acting because everybody's in them.
Right.
But with the Blues Brothers, it's all joy. Like you get to discover Belushi, you get to discover Aykroyd. I mean, Ghostbusters would come along a few years later, and he'd suddenly be everywhere.
But back to the music thing. Music, if you're not like exposed to that, and you have the internet, you can go down the rabbit hole pretty easy.
Yeah, God, but you can now. Like when we saw it, there wasn't one. There was no. You were lucky enough to have somebody who had the collection, but I had to go. I had the soundtrack. I had a couple of Blues Brothers albums, but it took a while to find everything else. Although it did lead me sideways towards chess records and the rhythm and blues stuff from the 40s and 50s, and there's so much in it. There's so much history, decades of musical history, all caught up there. And now, you can watch that. And you can just but you had to go out and discover it. Yeah, I was half an hour from a decent record store, at least, maybe more, when I saw it the first time. It was just
I had to go to the east side to go to like the good record store that wasn't. I don't know. We had Peaches was the name of the record store.
I remember Peaches.
Was our part of town. And then, but if you wanted like the good record store that had like the deep cuts and like the if you wanted anything good, you had to go to the funky record store. Mm-hmm. If you wanted that like picture disc of Exodus, you had to go to like the funky music store.
Yeah. God, there were superstores in Toronto when I was a kid, which was great. There was the two big ones, Sam the Record Man and A&A Records, were right at Yonge Street in Dundas. They were the mecca. Now there's one HMV there, and it's not bad, but it is an HMV. They're slowly moving away from music and into shirts and cups and Orphan Black mugs and things like that. It's just no way to live.
That's why it's cool to go to on the West Coast. There's a lot more of that around.
Sure.
You can have a legitimately proper afternoon and go to a non-hipster arcade and go into a proper record store.
Santa Monica, San Francisco, where are we talking? direct
Seattle,
people. They're going to want to know.
Seattle, Portland.
Oh, that part of it.
Yeah, mostly, yeah.
I've never been to Seattle or Portland. I've got to keep doing. I have to find a way to go out there. Because LA has music culture, but everybody's such a jerk about it. Like everybody's a gatekeeper. Everybody has secrets, and I mean, I love Amoeba music, and I love wandering around in there. But that's the only place I can go and feel like I'm not being pushed away somehow. Like Amoeba music is way more inviting in Los Angeles, but everything else is about the scene.
Right.
And in San Francisco, you've got Amoeba and the Berkeley one, and the Haight is just full of weird little shops that have little treasures. But yeah, in New York, I mean, I was just in Other Music the other day and bought the Bowie album and felt simultaneously awful and that I missed it, because now it just looks like it just came out 2 days before his death. I didn't get the chance. It didn't show up in Canada. I feel like I'm a poser for buying it, but and I noticed that you've got the music running. It's all Bowie all the time at this
Yeah,
point.
we're doing 1 week, all the restaurants, all Bowie all the time. Yeah. I mean, his apartment's down the street.
I know.
So, we saw him around the neighborhood, like, here and there. And but it's interesting, the Bowie thing.
Because it's the one part of music that doesn't line up with the Blues Brothers.
Not the sidetrack, but we were all very sad about it, and we couldn't figure out why we were so more sad than usual.
Yeah. Same way. We all feel the same way, and I think, like, my theory is that he was everything. He was everything. He was glam rock. He was rock. He was punk almost. Like, it all comes from there. Except for soul and R&B, which pre-existed him.
Sure.
But he fused those two. Like, he made them work.
Yeah, it was, what do you call it? The plastic soul era of Bowie, right?
Yeah. Everything he did was important to someone. Like, there's no wasted time. He did everything he wanted to do without compromise. But it never felt like that. It just felt like an organic expression of whatever he wanted to do. And there's joy. There's so much joy. Like, even I should have been... okay, so he died on Sunday night. I was driving the dog to the vet Monday morning and listening to the Sound and Vision box set, and I forgot the fucking line in Space Oddity where he says, "Tell my wife I love her very much," and I lost it in the car. I almost had to pull over, and I didn't like. I knew he died on Sunday night. I was up at 2 a.m. when the news broke. I had hours to digest this, and it just shattered me. But by Thursday night, when we went to the Dutch for dinner, the music was fun again. It was enjoyable. There's it doesn't let you mourn. It won't let you mourn.
My favorite thing I read was the Iggy Pop piece in the New York Times. Because he wrote, it was probably like a 10-paragraph piece, and he told the story he told that when he would the 2 albums that he produced, Iggy's first 2 albums, when he went solo, Bowie wanted to visit his mom and dad, because Iggy grew up in a crappy part of Detroit with like no money, and his mom and dad lived in a trailer, and Bowie wanted to meet his mom and dad, and so they went to. He tells a story about bringing David Bowie to the trailer, and his dad saying, "Thank you so much for helping my son out, and it's so great that you're helping him out," and Iggy saying, the only thing he could think of was his dad, "Stop embarrassing me in front of David Bowie." And this was like 1970, whatever. It's pretty amazing.
Yeah, it's incredible. Everybody knew what he was. There was there's no antipathy. Nobody's like, there are a couple of younger people who are trying to make the statement that, he wasn't important to me. I don't know who he was. A friend of mine who's younger, when Alan Rickman died on Thursday morning, when that news broke, he said that hit him harder because he was younger and he was a diehard kid, and Alan Rickman was like a god. And he had the Harry Potter movies, and it was all part of his continuity. And I said, okay, but Bowie, if Bowie is the entire, he's the reason everything sounds like it does now. You just don't fully appreciate that until you listen to his catalog. So I'm gonna just throw all the CDs. We
were at his last. We saw his last 2 New York concerts.
Oh, when was that?
2004.
Okay.
Yeah. He did 2 shows that year. One at Jones Beach and one at MSG.
How were they? I assume good.
They were great. Yeah, we went to the second one. So. Yeah,
I never saw him live. It's another regret. But yeah, there is no intersection as far as I can tell. There's sort of a nodding acknowledgement between Bowie and and the music of the Blues Brothers, like that specific type of music. But unless there's a cover that I've never heard, which I kind of hope there is now, because then I get to discover it, I don't think there's much of a connection.
No, probably not.
The other question I wanted to ask, because you worked on a film that is like virtually forgotten and is justly forgotten, and I don't think anyone can blame you for any of it. The one with the magic crab with a little hat on. And what was the experience like? What were you expecting, and for in terms of film work based on movies like the Blues Brothers gives one the sense that movies are giant machines, whirling pieces going all the time. You know, like it's such a strange monster for what it is, because you get the sense that watching it that at any moment the budget is going to explode, or they're going to cut and strike the sets before they're finished. The whole thing feels breathless. Even the quiet scenes, like they're rushing to get it done. Aykroyd supposedly said that cocaine was built into the budget somewhere, probably through the soundtrack side, just to keep Belushi going. But the sense of real risk and real danger is present, and I think that's where Landis's greatest skill was at that time. He was making movies like Animal House and Blues Brothers, and even the next one, American Werewolf in London, that feel really, really risky, even when they're big studio productions. There is a sense of avant-garde danger happening. I mean, the Blues Brothers on paper, I would assume, is unfilmable, and he somehow made it work. Like, how do you even structure? You storyboard the crap out of everything, but how do you even decide, and at this point I want a car to go into a mall because I'm pretty sure we've never seen that before, and someone else can say there's a reason we've never seen that before, and he still made it happen and nobody got hurt, and it actually is amazing in the film. So based on movies that have to be run like a military campaign, what was your experience of working? I mean, did you do all your stuff before, during, after? When did you?
Well, with that movie, you know,
And was it called Simply Irresistible to start with? Was it always called that?
No, it was the whole thing was like mega fascinating to me, and it was, you know, I was 28 at the time, 29 at the time, and definitely the most money I've ever made in the shortest period of time with the least amount of work was
that is Hollywood
was at that, and the director came to me and he said he wanted to make, and this is why I got really excited about it and agreed to do it, is because he wanted to make the American version of Tampopo.
Okay.
Which is not what that movie is.
No, not at all.
You know, so it was like,
that doesn't make sense.
It's amazing to see, you know, to hear that conversation, to see like that whole process was like fascinating, you know, to me, because I was like invested in it, but only as an employee, right. You know, giving kind of my opinion about it. And his, you know, that the idea was we have this script and we want to make it as believable as possible that she's a chef, and we want you to take a look at the dishes and give them kind of an aphrodisiacal quality to it, and you know, do your thing. So I had to present, you know, take these dishes they had in the script, it did not sound very good at all, and change them and present them to everybody. And so I went to their apartment with the director and the producer and the screenwriter, who I did not know at the time was the director's wife, because no one gave me that piece of information. And there was like I know a bunch of people from the production, and present my dishes, and I was really proud of them. They were like, you know, if you were going to do like a super sexy, refined aphrodisiac menu, like I nailed it. Really. And the wife was very upset that we were changing her dishes inside the script.
Oh, so she had laid out what she wanted. That specifically. And
there were some heated words that went on. I was like, oh my God, what did I just get myself into? But it was interesting. And then the production of it was done, you know, in a trailer underneath the Long Island Expressway.
Okay.
With like no air conditioning or proper kitchen or everything, and it was fascinating. Yeah, there was a little bit of work with Michelle on how to make her look like a chef. But I did that, and I thought that there was going to be this whole other budding career in Hollywood for me. Yeah. You know, I was like, you know, Andrew Carmellini, culinary consultant to the stars. I was like convinced. I was like, moving to LA, baby. Right. But the work dried up after that.
Yes. Well, you know, I don't think anyone, like I said, can fault your work in the film. And she does, like, physically, that was convincing. It was just everything else about the movie that made it just I saw it, and I don't think I knew at the time that you were involved. I think it was one of those things where I was emailing my reviews around to friends and here and there, and when Gwen got it, she responded by saying, "Oh, I don't think we've seen that." And Andrew worked on that. I'm like, "Oh, that's awkward." But yeah, it's so weird. It's so fascinating to watch a movie that just goes sideways like that, because right from the beginning it stumbles and it never course corrects. But
they still the director still netted $4 million off it.
It's a corrupt and miserable system. But you did okay too, because you weren't blackballed.
But it was the original name of the name of the script was Vanilla Fog.
That's right. I did remember that.
That was the original name of the script,
which also makes no sense now in the film.
Well, there was some fog action that happened here and there, and it was like they're trying to turn it into an ascent, and it was also kind of like a window into the pre-movie kind of like psychological hype game, because there was an interview before the name of the, they changed the name they released.
Yeah.
It was I don't know, it was on Letterman, or it was like one of the nighttime shows where she like referenced Vanilla Fog for like completely something else. Like,
right.
It was kind of interesting. It was an interesting process to see.
I would think, yeah. I mean, I've been on sets a couple of times, but I've never been part of a production on that level where you are part of it. Like, your work is part of this giant thing, and the work still works. But, I mean, it worked out. Things worked out okay for you. It just, the Hollywood...
But there's been a bunch of chefs that, since then have done a bunch of stuff, like Thomas Kelly did Ratatouille, and I think Batali's been used for, like, a couple things.
Yeah, Batali and someone else. There were two people involved in this, it's called Burnt now. It's the Bradley Cooper movie.
Yeah, Burnt, yeah. Which I was kind of pissed he didn't ask me, because he comes to Locanda all the time, and he's very good friends with my partner.
No, Cooper's great. The movie is not his fault, I'll put it that way.
I actually haven't seen it yet, because I have a hard time watching like food movies like that about chefs.
Well, you won't like this one, because this is directly counter to your own personal philosophy, which is don't be an asshole.
Right.
Which is also my personal philosophy. And so within 5 minutes, I was thinking, this is a movie where they have fallen in, and I don't think Cooper believes this himself, but the writer, Stephen Knight, who's a pretty smart guy, still bought into the idea that if you are gifted, it justifies anything you do. And like, I get the idea of the film people coming out with this, because there are plenty of directors who are martinets and assholes, and that's how they get their movies made, and that carries over. But in the whole chef thing, it's like, he's yelling at people, he's abusing people, he's an asshole, and I know that's real.
That's true. There are a lot of chefs that pricks.
Yeah,
no question.
But you don't have to be. Like,
no, you don't have to.
You prove this on a regular basis.
Yeah. New generation's a little bit more toned down, like the younger generation, but
good. But if the movie buys into it very much, and I realize now it's going to sound like I'm leading you into making a statement, but it's not Cooper's fault. He's playing the role really, really well. But it's one of those things where it's just like, within 5 minutes, it's like, you think this, and then I'm stuck with it for 90 minutes. And then, in the end, it's like, you really ought to fail. I think this guy should fail. He's chasing his vaunted 3rd Michelin star, and it's like, I don't want him to get one. That seems like I should want that. I should be rooting for this guy, but meh.
Well, a massive ego really helps,
I would think.
And if you don't have a massive ego and willing to like put the team through hell and put it helps.
Yeah, and I get it. I mean, you wouldn't just as with filmmaking, just as with what I do. If you don't think your opinion matters or your talent is important enough, you're not gonna. Why would you do this at all? Like, what would draw you to this incredibly competitive, emotionally fraught, highly vulnerable position or industry or job? But yeah, you don't have to be a dick about it. You just don't.
Yeah. So my culinary movie consulting career started and ended with that film.
Okay.
I don't know, and I wonder if I think it might have been the first culinary credit movie.
Yeah, I was trying to think of them. There was a bunch that followed, but they were all kind of running in the wake of like Water for Chocolate and things like that, where food porn became a thing.
Sure.
And Tampopo probably is the first example of that. Sure. Maybe 9.5 Weeks. Yeah, there was that scene with the fridge.
I think Tampopo was before 9.5 Weeks.
Yeah, no, I'm just thinking like the studio chasing it.
Babette's Feast, like there was all
Babette's Feast,
like
yeah. It's 88, maybe 87. But yeah, well, it's just. It's good that you got that experience, because it let me get this from you, which was great. And then I will close with I'll close with the same question I always close with, which is, how, if at all, has the movie influenced you? Has the Blues Brothers ever come back for you? Has it influenced your work? Is there anything you stole from it, even personally, borrowed or used as an attitude? Like, where is it in your life?
I think Blues Brothers, there was the music thing was huge. I think Blues Brothers probably introduced me to Zappa, even though there's no Zappa involved, right, because of those connections with the musicians. And, then that's the discovery with like Bela Bartok and Stravinsky and kind of all this like high concept, music beyond like great R&B and all this stuff. I think there's definitely like, it's an aspirational movie, right? It's it's trying to like climb out of middle class, if you will, or kind of like it's got some, I think all that's big influence. We still talk about it. I talk to my friends who are growing up, and it still is a reference.
Right.
We will still go like line for line.
It's a fixed point in your lives.
Yeah.
Like, it's something you can always come back to. Which version of it do you have? Do you the iTunes, Blu-ray, DVD? Which one do you have a bunch of?
It's on iTunes. Yeah.
I always wonder about that too. Like, how do people keep the thing? Because so many people will say like, "Oh, I have the Criterion edition of this," or I still.
There's definitely like a VHS tape in my parents' attic somewhere hanging out with it, but
yeah,
it's at home on VHS. On iTunes.
It's good. It's with you forever. That's nice. My thanks to Andrew Carmellini, whose film credit, Simply Irresistible, can be found on DVD and somehow Blu-ray from Anchor Bay Entertainment. You can also find him on Twitter at Andre Carmellini, which is Andrew Carmellini without the W, and you can find him at his restaurants, which will soon include Leuca in Brooklyn's William Vale Hotel. You can find the Blues Brothers on DVD and Blu-ray from Universal Studios Home Entertainment and on iTunes and Google Play. Check out the extended edition if you're so inclined. It's got more music, which is, reason enough. As always, you can find me on Twitter at Norm Wilner and elsewhere on the internet at nowtoronto.com. You can also find this podcast on Twitter at Semcast, SEMcast, and on the web at someoneelsesmovie.com. If you want to leave a review on iTunes, that would be very kind of you. This week's call sign is hit it. Thanks for listening.
I'm afraid you're just too darn loud.